Hi, I'm Cece, and welcome to Vanity and Violence, True Crime in Virginia, where beauty routines meet the darkest corners of the Commonwealth. Around here, we talk about real crimes, real victims, and real stories rooted right here in Virginia. Some cases are solved, some cases haven't been, some are still waiting for justice. But all of them deserve to be remembered. While we unpack these stories, sometimes I'll be doing what I do best, and that's talking or doing my makeup and skincare and how we show up best for ourselves, especially as we get a little older and a lot wiser. This isn't about glamorizing, it's about honoring and finding confidence, um, and staying curious. So grab your favorite product or your drink of choice. Let's get into it. This is Vanity and Violence, True Crime in Virginia. It was February 1949, a winter that didn't feel just cold, it was cold. In a small Virginia town, 37-year-old Frances Holliver and her 10-month-old baby, June. They were supposed to be safe, but instead their lives ended quietly, violently, and far too soon. This case did not make the headlines the way it should have. I literally had to dig and dig and dig, and there was just not a lot of information out there the way it should have been. There just was not a lot of updates about it. And in my opinion, justice, there was no justice the way it should have been. So tonight we're stepping back into that silence. I'm going to tell you what happened, what we know, and what still just doesn't make sense to me. So get comfortable. Do your makeup, drink your coffee or your wine, because this is Vanity and Violence, True Crime in Virginia. I'm your host, Cece, and this is the story of Frances and June Holliver. 37-year-old Frances Holliver was married to 40-year-old Charles Holliver. They had a 10-month-old baby named June. However, they did not live together. Frances was working as a waitress when she met Charles. Charles was a member of a colony by the name of Green Forest out in what was called Pender, Virginia. It is now Reston, Virginia. If you know anything about Virginia, you probably know where Reston is. Green Forest was a nudist colony, and he was a member there. Charles was a high school dropout. He lived with his mother in Washington, D.C., and he was going to help Frances become a, quote, white-collar worker. However, over the course of a couple years, um, he and Frances became romantically involved, and Frances then became pregnant with baby June. Charles said that Frances persuaded him to marry her. Okay. Um, but he said he would not live with her and not his, their child. Um, but he did agree to pay $5 whole a week to support baby June's, weekly expenses. Frances lived with her family and continued her waitressing job. Frances eventually became tired of the $5 a week and complained about it. And the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court in Washington, D.C. increased the child support to $6 whole a week, which, okay, I guess in 1949, that was a lot of money. $6 a week. Yeah, it probably was a lot of money. I guess I kind of, now that I think about it, yeah, it was a lot of money. But, it's a child, and it sounded like he just didn't want to be responsible for this kid in any way. So anyway, he um he has to pay $6 a week. So Charles continues to see Frances romantically and very regularly. Okay. Um Frances learns that she is pregnant again. She tells Charles about the pregnancy, and she tells him, "Hey, I'm moving in with you and your mom. Me and June are moving in with you and your mom. Um, that's just how it's going to be, right?" And Charles, however, was not happy about that and became very, very upset about it. He said it felt, quote, "This was a breach of his agreement with his wife," unquote. He became very upset and decided he had to get, quote, "rid of his wife." So, on Thursday, February 24th, 1949, Charles, Francis, and June drove to Reston, Virginia, to Green Forest. He said they arrived around 2:45 p.m. and Francis needed to use the bathroom, but there were no restrooms available. So Francis got out of the car and squatted beside the car to urinate. Charles said he took this opportunity to carry out his plan. He walked around, excuse me. He walked around to the side of the car and he shot Frances in the head. She fell to her side and she was still alive at that time. She looked up at him and she just simply said, "Charlie." And he then fired another shot to her heart. He stated that blood then came out of her mouth but it took approximately 2 minutes before she would pass away. Charles then dug a trench to bury her. This took him about an hour to 2 hours, he said. He said now it was about 5:45 PM. He put Frances's body in this makeshift grave, and he placed the still alive baby June on top of Frances. Um, and he fired the gun at baby June, but the gun would not discharge. So he started covering both of them with dirt. He heard baby June crying, so he just pressed down on the grave. When he started to leave, the car got stuck in mud. So he stayed the night in the car and then headed or hitchhiked his way back to his sister's house in Washington, D.C. Him and his brother-in-law went back to get his car the next day. He told his sister and brother-in-law that he and June had gotten into an argument, and she got angry and took the baby and took off walking the day before, and no one had seen or heard from her. So on February 25th, Charles filed a missing persons report. He told them the same thing he told his sister, and the police departments, the Boy Scouts, they all searched the grounds for baby June and Frances. And I'm assuming, it didn't say, but I'm assuming that they must have thought that his story just didn't add up, because why else would they just automatically search the grounds instead of going out to look for her? Um I don't know. That's just my thoughts about that. But anyway, so on Sunday, February 27th, the police discovered the bodies. Frances' jewelry was missing, and they said, obviously that her panties were down around her ankles, and that baby June had passed from suffocation. They said that Frances had a shot to the head, a shot to the heart. On February 28th, the police questioned Charles. He confessed to the murders voluntarily. He told the police, quote, "Good job for finding the bodies and the shovel." Charles said he thought he had, quote, "committed the perfect crime." I'm just going to read the first part of his statement because his statement was long, but just kind of unreal to me. So his statement reads, quote, "On Wednesday night, February 23rd, 1949, about 9:30 p.m., I was visiting at my wife's home at 931 New York Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C., at which time I decided to do away with my wife. The reason I decided to do away with her was that she failed to live up to her part of the agreement about our marriage. End quote. I, I have no words about that. But this whole case to me was just disturbing anyway. And I don't know if it was because there's a baby involved in how he did it. I don't know. The police asked him, since the gun didn't discharge, why didn't you just hit the baby with a shovel? That was even more disturbing to me. Like, why would y'all even ask something like that? What's a, you know? And he said, "Oh, I wouldn't do something like that." But okay. Anyway, so in court testimonies, his mother said that Charles was, quote, not well and, quote, could not hold a job. She also stated that Charles had attempted suicide at least once. He didn't have any friends or any type of a social life. His sister stated that he lived in a dream world but had a dark cloud hanging over him. Charles' mother had tried to get him help over the years, but he would not see a doctor. He tried to enlist in the service, but they rejected him, saying he had, quote, pre-psychotic qualities. Charles had been tried and convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death, to the death penalty. However, because during the trial, several psychiatrists had referred to Charles as, quote, insane, or used the word insanity to describe him, Charles appealed his case. Basically, using these words were expressions or opinions which have a tendency to bias the court or have a weight on the testimony. So the court reversed the case. He instead got an insanity verdict and was sentenced to Western State Hospital in Marion, Virginia, where he was declared insane. He was released in 1968. He spent a whole 18 years. When he got out, he moved to West Virginia, where he remained until his death in 2003. Um, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about this case because it's really, really flipping disturbing. Like I just can't. And I don't know. It really bothered me. Um but anyways, that's my case for tonight. I'm really bothered by it. I'm sorry, guys. Stay beautiful. Stay aware. Lock your doors. And until next week, this is Cece with Vanity and Violence. True crime in Virginia.